Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about an issue that quite a lot of composers have raised with me. And it's this. Well, I've come up with this idea, I've got a nice chord sequence, but I'm not quite sure what to do with it in terms of kind of generating a bit of energy in the rhythm, in terms of generating an accompaniment that works. Well, here's a tried and tested method that was particularly favoured by 19th century romantic composers, but you can use it in any modern style very happily. So let's have a look at what we've got here. I'm starting with a set of block chords. So just imagine, you might be one of the composers I'm talking about who's kind of come up with this chord sequence and you're thinking, that's a pretty cool chord sequence. I like this one. It goes like this. So what are these chords? Well, there's chord 1 in G major, the tonic chord, a G major chord. Then there's a diminished 7th chord. This is a diminished 7th chord in the key of E minor, which is quite a nice touch because the next chord is an E minor chord. Now, the key of E minor is the relative minor of G major. So it means that we can start in G major and then we can have a couple of chords that take us into E minor momentarily. But we don't really modulate to E minor because this E minor chord is also a chord in the home key of G major. It's chord 6. Then there's a C major chord or a chord 4. Then there's a G major chord or a chord 1 in second inversion. Then there's a dominant 7th chord, a 5/7 chord, a D7 chord in G major. And then we finish with the tonic chord of G major. So it's got a little bit of colour in it with this diminished 7th and then the chord of E minor, but it's a fairly kind of standard chord sequence. And you might think, well, it sounds quite nice as it is. It's a bit sort of hymn-like, isn't it? You might imagine a sort of choir singing that or something. It can be played on the piano, as I have done. It's very kind of peaceful. That's fine. But what happens if you're looking at that thinking, well, I'm really happy with these chords, but I don't want to just sit there kind of putting 2 beats on a chord, 2 beats on a chord, 2 beats on a chord. How do I make it more florid? How do I do something with it? Well, hopefully you can see from what I've written here how relatively straightforward it can be to make something quite transformed. So what I'm doing here is holding on to the melody notes that we had in the example above, holding on to the bass line as we had above, with just this one little amendment here where I'm just leaping an octave, so that's not a big deal. And then in the last bar, the last measure, doing the same thing, leaping an octave. And then I'm taking these middle notes of each chord in turn. You can see how I'm doing this. And then I'm just arpeggiating them from the bottom to the top. So that's what this is all about, taking those middle notes, starting on the bass note and arpeggiating them up like this. Now you might look at it and think, well, why am I writing this G twice? So I've got it for 2 beats here and also I've got it for half a beat there and doing the same thing here. Well, it's just a way of signifying that this G at one level is going to be a sustained bass line onto D sharp, onto E, onto C, onto D and so on. But also this G is the start of the arpeggiation, or this D sharp is the start of that arpeggiation. So it's just kind of making it clear where it comes from and how it works. So often you would see it scored like that in a piece of music. Okay, so let me now play the original chords and then play the arpeggiation, and you can hear and see how well it works. Here it comes with the arpeggiation. You see, it just gives you plenty of nice rhythmic flow, doesn't it? And breaks up those chords. It allows the line to sing at the top. It allows the bass line to be a kind of almost, not just a bass line, but almost a sort of secondary melodic line. So you feel this kind of duet between the outer parts with these sustained notes. And then the middle is the filling, but nicely broken up. And I've just broken the arpeggiation at the cadence. So you could carry on doing the arpeggiation here if you wanted to, no problem at all. But I'm just showing that it's possible to do the arpeggiation and then just to break out of it at the cadence. But when you do break out of it, you don't want too much of a sudden change between all these quavers or eighth notes and then suddenly stopping for 2 beats, stopping for 4 beats. So I've just broken that by having this octave leap, so we get those crotchets, those quarter notes, and another octave leap there, so we break up the 4 beats into 2 twos. So it's not too much of a shock going from the eighth notes or the quavers to those longer notes. Now, of course, you can change the impact of that by having higher dynamic levels or lower dynamic levels, changing the speed, so it could be quite gentle as I've just done it. Low dynamics, fairly kind of steady tempo. Or you could do something that's kind of more energetic, you know, faster, louder. Give you a different kind of character, wouldn't it? But it's just a means of taking some block chords like that and arpeggiating them in a way that brings an accompaniment to life and either makes a slow moving melody really sing and gives you a bit of a stronger idea of the polarity between the top and the bottom by separating out the middle of the texture, or it can be something faster and energetic, in which case those quavers in the middle really propel the music forwards. So it's a very simple compositional idea, but actually one that's got a lot of mileage in it. So lots of people are sort of thinking in chords, they're working out how to put a chord sequence together that they're happy with, and then it's kind of like, yeah, but it doesn't sound very interesting. What can I do with it? There's an idea. Now, it's just one of a number of possible ideas. I mean, I've written that one down there. You could do it in a different rhythm. You could do it in triplets, you know. That will be a slightly different way of doing it. You could do some other kind of mixture of quavers and crotchets or eighth notes and quarter notes. You could do something like that. You see, lots of possible variations on this, but it's still the same idea of holding that melody at the top, the bass at the bottom, enjoying that polarity of movement between the top and the bottom, having independent rhythmic movement in the middle, just breaking up the chords. So before you take the chords that you've written and bin them because, you know, well, what am I going to do with them? Think about this idea. Arpeggiating the chords. I've arpeggiated them from the bottom to the top. You could arpeggiate them from the top to the bottom. You could do a little bit of a mixture, ducking and diving, going up and coming down again. So many different possibilities. But you'll be able to work with that once you get into this way of thinking about converting what we call block chords to this more florid texture. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, you might like to go to the Music Matters website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. When you get there, have a look at Maestros. It's our international global community. And if you want to join us, that will be absolutely wonderful. Level 1 is a kind of support level, nothing to do with ability, just levels of engagement. The perks come with level 1. If you join as level 2, then you get all the level 1 perks as well. But with level 2, you have additional benefits such as access to a monthly live stream where you can join me for an hour of solid teaching every month, and you can ask your questions, you can request topics. Fantastic. And there's a live chat running. You interact with other musicians around the world, and people who join it just say how much they value it. Or you could go to level 3, which gives you all the level 1 and level 2 benefits. But in addition, you have an additional live stream as well as discounts on our courses. And in this one, much more one-to-one focus. So if you're a composer or a performer, you could submit your composition or recorded performance, and you could get one-to-one feedback from me during that second live stream. Again, live chat running. We all share the material with each other. We learn from each other, and it's a wonderfully supportive community. Well, that and lots more at www.mmcourses.co.uk.